Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Jeff, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, Eric, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and it was good to see you walk through the door. Again, part of my master plan, my master list. Took a little while to get there, but I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to be here.
So, a lot to cover here. First and foremost, congratulations on the cover shot.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, talk a little about that.
It was a cover shot for Cincy magazine. They did an article about they called them entrepreneurs in Pittsburgh.
Entrepreneurs. Love that.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
It's kind of doesn't roll off the tongue as easily though. But they focused on sort of three different segments of the art scene in Pittsburgh. That one artist, Mia Tarducci, curator Tara Fay, and then myself as a art dealer and gallerist. They approached me. I guess it was probably February this year, pre-COVID, and said that they, were interested in doing an interview. So I did the interview and then kind of forgot about it. I mean, so much has happened between then and now.
Right.
And then I saw a post a couple weeks ago from the editor of the magazine, and it showed the link to the online publication, and there I was on the cover. I'm like, oh wow, I forgot that even happened.
I forgot I did that.
Yeah, so that was cool though. And I started thinking after I read it, I thought, wow, how much of this would be different, or how might I have answered these questions differently now opposed to then in just such a short period of time. I don't know that much would have changed for me in answering those specific questions, but certainly a lot has changed during the time of being.
No doubt. How are you maneuvering?
Carefully. We were closed for about 3.5 months, and we have reopened. Typically we're only open 3 days a week, Thursday,
Right.
Friday, and Saturday. The other 3 days prior to that, I spent a lot of time doing studio visits with artists or meeting with clients about their projects or art for their home or their collections. So the gallery's open 3 days a week. We're back to that.
Yeah.
We have had two exhibitions since reopening. The first one was with an artist, Brenda Stumpf. That ran for about 6 weeks. And then about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we opened a new exhibition with Zach Brown and Mary Mazziotti. Brenda's show, being the first reopening, was, I would say, lightly attended. Certainly not the kind of crowds that we're used to.
Right.
But still, a lot of people came out. And I think people who did come out came out to specifically see the artwork. So I think I had a lot of better conversations with those people as opposed to it being just a complete social event.
Yeah.
This past one, we definitely had a uptick in attendance, which was great, and have had a couple sales since to opening. So it's good to. I think we're kind of getting our feet back underneath of us and starting to see people kind of trying to get back to whatever a new normal is. As far as when we do open, we require everyone to have masks.
Absolutely.
The whole front of my gallery opens up. The front windows, they kind of fold in, and so it becomes a complete open air environment. So again, there's this sense of indoor outdoor. So some people will hang outside for a little bit and then come through the gallery and go back outside. So it's very inviting that way. And then we've been controlling traffic too. We won't let more than 25 people in at one time. So for all intents and purposes, it's working pretty well, but we're just trying to get that spark back.
Have you seen any natural timidity with the first opening? I mean, are people slowly getting more comfortable?
Definitely. It has been a slow process. Even just the daily foot traffic with that first exhibition was a lot lighter than what I've seen thus far, even with this new one being open 2 weeks. So I think people are gradually getting more comfortable with at least being able to go outside protected and do it in a very careful way. The cool thing about us is you're not coming in and touching the artwork, so there's not a lot of surfaces to touch. You
can safely distance there too, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's not a big space.
By nature, what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to be up on top of people, and there's not like you're standing in a checkout line or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in general for going out, it's probably one of the more safe environments. Maybe even more so than, certainly more so than probably a restaurant or bar or anything like that. But we're doing our best as well as everyone else is.
So nice shirt, by the way.
Hey, well, I wore this for you. I did. As I told you, I said I don't do a whole lot of research into what I'm stepping into sometimes. Maybe that's good or bad. But I know, know about your history. I know about your connection to Paul Stanley and Kiss. And
that's cool.
I'm a big fan.
That's cool.
You know, actually, I was thinking about this on the drive over here. I think part of the reason that I even got into art was probably this band.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, you know, at an early age, you get this wonderful visual of these guys dressed in all kinds of fantastic ways, right? Playing this loud rock music. I think I was maybe in first grade when I got into Kiss.
Right on.
And followed them well into my middle school years. Ace Frehley's the reason why I picked up the guitar in the first place. But I think even just like seeing the visuals and looking at the album covers, remember those? Remember album covers?
God, yes.
And staring at those and reading the liner notes and trying to get as much visual information as possible and redrawing that logo over and over and over and over again.
All of us did exactly the same thing, right? Anyone born in that era.
Totally.
We all did the same
we
thing.
We did. And so we just took different paths with
That's
it, right?
exactly
So mine
right.
eventually led me to art school and I think my interest in art overall. And so I would say that Kiss might be a big part of that.
Yeah, it was. Boy, that's a good question. Because art in general, for me, I didn't really look at it hard until Paul Stanley painted.
Yeah.
Which was '06, and that's what one of the. Is it Giclée? Am I pronouncing that
Yeah,
correctly?
Giclée.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's something. I went to Chicago for that.
Right on.
But anyways, that was my first rule, taking a hard look at like, what am I missing here? Because I was aware of it. I was aware of Dolly and things like that. You know, some of the legendary artists, but it never touched me in a way personally. I didn't know anyone that really was an accomplished artist, and then that introduced me into it, and I've been fascinated since. Yeah, it was a good gateway.
Yeah,
they're a visual band.
Yeah, for sure.
They're very visual band.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they know how to make money too.
Yeah,
rumor has it.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So your background a little bit. Talk a little bit about that.
So, how far do you want to go back?
I want to go all the way back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm born in Pittsburgh. I was raised in the suburbs in the North Hills in Shaler, actually, right off of Middle Road, and have been in Pittsburgh ever since. I have been living in the East End. Although I grew up in the suburbs, I definitely am a city kid. My grandparents both lived in the city, and I think every time we went to visit them, I felt like more connected to that.
Why?
I don't know. I just thought there was something about it, its vibrancy or its vibe, that maybe lacked in the burbs. You know, I mean, I had a great. I was in a great neighborhood, lots of kids. I don't take anything away from my upbringing, but there was just something about being in the city. I think the pulse of the city was always more interesting to me. So
even at a young age.
Yeah. So I think, you know, even watching Sesame Street, you know, you would see that they're hanging out in you know, what looked like Brooklyn, and you would think, well, that neighborhood doesn't look anything like mine, but it's pretty cool, right? So I don't know. I think it's all those, again, getting back to all the visuals we were fed at a young age, that maybe influenced us. But yeah, so I live in Highland Park. The gallery is in Sharpsburg, so it's right across the river from me. Sharpsburg's a pretty cool town.
Oh, it sure is.
It's always been kind of a connected thread to my families. My grandmother at one point lived in the high rise there for 10 years. I've spent countless hours at Mass at St. Mary's Church there. And you know, just driving through it back and forth it's always been on my radar. So when I started thinking about the gallery and where I might place it, Sharpsburg was definitely one of the neighborhoods I was interested in.
You bought a three-story?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. It used to be the old St. Vincent de Paul, and it's two buildings that were conjoined when I bought it. So the left half, if you will, was basically their large corner storefront retail spot, and connected to it was a three-story building, the first story of which was used for mainly their larger furniture and their sort of back office type things, shipping and receiving and sorting and that type of stuff. The upper two floors were barely used. The second floor was kind of used as secondary storage, and the third floor looked like it hadn't been touched in over 50, 60 years.
Wow.
So complete gut renovation, put two apartments in the upper two floors, and then a brand new gallery in the first floor. And I'm still looking for a fabulous tenant next door to me on the corner storefront.
Anyone out there?
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. Give me a call. Let's be neighbors.
I don't want to speed up that. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Anything unusual in your background that you could, besides music, that you could point to, giving you that spark of interest in just being creative? Period. Because you also, for many years, correct me if I'm wrong, this term has bounced around a lot, Jeff, but you are a creator.
Yeah, sure.
Is that correct?
Sure, yeah.
I don't even know what that means
Yeah,
today anymore.
well, I mean, I think getting back to just an early age, just always having a pencil or crayon in your hand and drawing.
Okay.
My parents aren't or weren't artistic, but they would spend the time, with a coloring book and me, and we would do those things. And my dad would occasionally draw something. I'd ask him to draw something, and I'd sort of color or fill it in. My aunt, never was a professional artist. She actually, I remember her taking a bunch of painting classes, and she was very artistic, still was very artistic, and she would spend some time with me too. So I think just at a young age, sort of nurturing that creativity, and then just, expanding upon that, always thinking about, wanting to create and draw something, again, album covers or logos in high school, and then finally going to college, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do.
You don't say.
Yeah. I went through a couple different majors before finally saying, okay, let's try this art thing. Found that I
usually starts the other way around.
Yeah, normally. Oh, I know, right? No, well, went pre-med first, then accounting, and then finally art. Yeah, no, I took a circuitous path, I guess. But when I got into art school, I realized that I loved painting, but I don't think I would ever be the painter I aspired to be. And I thought, well, how do you make a career out of this? So I got into graphic design. Again, getting back to looking at those albums and the design of those album covers, and just thinking about what that meant, and all the magazines that I had read and looked at, the layouts, and there's something about that appealed to me. So took the path of being a graphic designer. Got out of school, and it was 91 when I had graduated, December of 91 or January of 91. At that time, we were going through a bit of a recession. Job market
and
was
still
tough.
Pre-internet.
Yeah, way pre-internet.
For those who are young, watching this, that's pre-internet.
Yeah, what is the internet? We were. Oh gosh. We actually had to work.
Yes, we did. That was real work.
It was real work. But having trouble just trying to find a job and figuring out what I wanted to do. I ended up bumping into a couple guys that had recently formed their own sort of design firm / agency.
Okay.
Started basically just showing up on their doorstep every day for a few weeks, and realizing this is something I wanted to do, and then approached them and said, hey, look, you're in a position where you could grow, you could use some people, and you could use a little cash infusion. I had some money set aside because I thought maybe I'd go to grad school, and I thought I'm going to just invest in this. So bought in, became a partner of this agency, and we just went full bore.
What was the name?
It was called Idea House.
Yes.
So we had that for about, I was part of it for about 5 years, and left to then start another small agency that only lasted about 10 months. Left there to work for another large firm called Exhibit Group Giltspur. We talked about Giltspur earlier.
Yes.
They were a neighbor of yours
yes,
not too long ago.
Yes, indeed.
Worked for them as a creative director, doing a lot of trade show and event type stuff. Left them to start my own firm again doing trade show and events. This time we were doing it more internationally. We had an office in Frankfurt, Germany, one in Shanghai, China for a little while, and one in Stockholm, Sweden. And I did that for about 10 years. 10 years before I felt like I wanted to do something else. I think I'd had something just gnawing at me, but I wasn't sure what that was. Got out, trying to figure out what that was. Spent 10 months doing that, just didn't quite have anything spark. Got a job offer from another trade show firm, worked for them for about 4 years. And then, again, something I enjoyed and I liked doing, but wasn't completely fulfilling. My dad had gotten sick, and I felt that it was time to kind of focus on him. So left that job, spent some time with my dad in his last few months, and then thought I'd figure it out after that. And the figuring it out after that has kind of led me to where I am now. I started working with some friends who are artists and just talked to them about the idea of where their struggles were, how that they, are great artists and creators, but terrible marketers and salespeople.
Right.
So I felt like everything that I'd done prior to this with all of my sales and marketing skills, that I could maybe be that mouthpiece or that bridge for them to connect them from their art and their studios to their patrons. So
that seems to be the biggest challenge for them, right?
Yeah,
don't you think?
For sure.
You can be very, very talented, but completely undiscovered because you don't have the ability to self-promote.
That's exactly it. And not that you don't want to do it, but it's just not where your skill set lies. I mean, as I tell artists all the time, I'd much rather see them doing what they do best. Stay in the studio and create and just crank out amazing work, and then let me help you on the other end of that. Let me get it in front of the right people and ultimately make sales so you can continue to do what it is that you do.
Mm-hmm. I think the general public, and let me get your comment on this, but I think there's a perception out there that, you know, you need to be one of those kind of people to appreciate art or understand art or be in that community or, and I want to say there's probably a level of embarrassment or perceived embarrassment with the average person like myself, average person in society looking into that world.
Yeah.
There's something there. I talked a little bit with Mia about it as well, and Tom McGallis and a couple, Zach Rutter, a couple other artists that they feel it, and they, all three of them in different ways, would like to break that down. I would imagine you face that too.
Yeah, of course, and it's something that, you know, it's a challenge that you're constantly facing and trying to, like you said, break down. We have a little sandwich board sign in front of the gallery that has the gallery name on it, and at the bottom it says "Art for All," and that's really what we believe in. I mean, it is and should be accessible to all people. There is no entry fee to walk in. There is no status to be able to walk in. Right. Being in Sharpsburg, it's really kind of been cool because when we do open those front windows and have the gallery completely open, there is no barrier. You don't have to open that front door to come in. You can literally just step in.
Right.
And I've had people just who have walked down that street up and down 100 times, and they've just for whatever reason haven't stepped in, but then those doors are open and they look and they kind of peek their head in for a minute, and I gradually say, "Come on in." And they say, "Was it cost anything to come in?" "Oh, absolutely not, come on in, books are free." And they connect with the art, and I've had people that have then continued to come back. They may never buy anything, and that's not the point. The point is that I've brought something to that community that they haven't had before, and I've opened that door to them to other possibilities of what art is and can be, right?
That's great.
And that's very fulfilling to me.
I can imagine so.
Yeah, totally. So I had one gentleman, he's an older gentleman, I don't really even know his name. I think he lives in Etna, and he's been in the gallery a few times, and he called maybe a couple weeks ago on a Friday, and he said, I know you guys open typically at 11, will you be open today? I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, we're here." He said, "Okay, great." So he came in, and as soon as he walked in the door, he said, "This is the highlight of my week."
Wow.
He's been looking forward all week to just coming into the gallery, and all he did, he spent maybe 10-15 minutes, he walked around, looked at everything, and he said thank you. And that's, that to me was so fulfilling. That made my week.
Well, that's the essence of it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the essence of art?
Totally.
I mean,
it's about the experience.
Yeah, there's a component of business to it. There has to be for it to survive.
Yeah, of course.
But the essence of it is connection.
Yeah, exactly. It's not too dissimilar. I mean, another artistic form being music, right? Same kind of thing. You might listen to a song on the radio. You don't have to buy it or own it, but you're still connecting to it.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the average person, again, like myself, who does not take that leap and really is missing something. If they don't go at least experience it, try it, understand it. There is something, I don't know, visceral. You will connect with something.
Yeah.
It may, this artist might not be expressing in your style, but there are artists out there that will.
Yeah, exactly. And we work with a variety of different artists in different mediums and different styles.
The basis is contemporary, right?
It is contemporary, and it is mainly regional and Pittsburgh focused.
Right.
That will always be the case.
Yeah.
But we do work with artists outside of the area. As a matter of fact, the show that we're going to do that's going to open in the beginning of October, I've got a painter local to Pittsburgh, and then I'm bringing in a ceramicist from Philadelphia. So again, it's this pairing of two different mediums, and one's male and one's female, and one's a little bit more seasoned, one's a little bit of more of an emerging artist. So I like putting these juxtapositions together because their work in certain ways speaks to one another and reacts to one another. But they're two very different people and very different artists. And you might walk into the gallery and like one versus the other, but you've still been exposed to the other two. So it's a nice way of just, again, trying to get more exposure to more people in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, and I can't express it any stronger, and I'm sure you will agree, it's not what our parents might have thought art galleries or art events are. This snootiness is not there.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's why I love about the younger generation, because I'm finding they don't give a fuck. They don't care.
No, they don't.
They're just, the pretentiousness, they laugh at it.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, I think, for the most part with this younger generation is they're so digitally focused, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're on their devices all the time. And that's, I think, in many ways how they're getting their first tastes of art, right? While what we might have gotten our first taste holding that physical album cover, they're getting
that was better, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
I agree. Just the feel and the smell,
It was
right?
organic.
Totally. But they're flipping through, so they're already getting exposed to art and artists, and there's a little bit more of a comfort level with them just coming out to exhibitions. Our exhibitions, when we do have our opening events, are great. They're well attended, and they're attended from a variety of different people of all ages, of all sexes, and races, and everything in between, which is great. We want to see as much of that as possible. Absolutely. Because it's even those interactions that happen within the gallery that are interesting too. Just the human interaction with other people. It's cool to bring different people from different places together in one place under the umbrella of art.
In that field, I would imagine you communicate with artists primarily in Pittsburgh or this region, but occasionally outside of this area. But you also communicate with other art gallerists. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, sure. Gallerists, galleries, gallerists. Yeah, sure. I mean, so you have to have your finger, I would imagine, on the pulse of and trends. And that's very, of course, very relevant in what you're doing. Yeah, but that is true. There are very much trends in art. I'm trying to create a gallery that's not trendy.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, I think it means that I'm not looking to create something that's going to be popular today and not popular tomorrow. I'm looking at artists that are doing something that I think is interesting and significant, that does speak to today, but has the longevity of continuing into the future. Whether it's currently how they're expressing themselves, or how they may evolve their artwork or their practice. I want to be something that have a gallery that is looked at as something that's always fresh and current, but yet is just not a flash in the pan kind of thing.
Okay. And again, a layman like myself looking at that, how would I even begin to know that if you painted something, let's say you personally painted something today that looks rather contemporary to me, that 10 years from now that might not be relevant? Do you know what I mean? It's really up to interpretation. Wouldn't you agree to some degree?
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a great point, and that's not one that I know I can particularly answer. Even if you look at very well-known, famous artists that are collected in museums around the world, they might have various periods that they worked on. Okay. Right. But yet you still can see there's something about that artist when an artist has a particular style or signature. There's something that transcends all of this, right? So I guess that's what I'm getting at. Okay. I don't want somebody that's just kind of here today and gone tomorrow. I want to work with people that I feel are literally committed to this, and this is their lives and their careers. You want to feel their passion too. Yeah, exactly. And while I might be showing something from one artist this year, they might change their series or style 3 or 5 years from now, but yet you still feel there's a thread or connection between them. You know it came from that artist's hand, right? So I guess that's what I'm more interested in. I don't want to just work with someone that is, maybe super hot today and will never do anything after that, or keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again, then it just becomes boring. I want to see artists that are continuing to push themselves and grow.
So to the average Joe on the street, the concept is that you are a facility that then takes commissions in, or you basically are a marketing arm for artists. Is that how it works?
It is. So the gallery has only been open since November, right? But I've been doing working with artists and creating exhibitions for over the last 5 years. Started originally doing pop-up exhibitions. Yes. When I thought about wanting to open a gallery, I started kind of putting everything together to make that happen. I worked with about a dozen artists that I started talking to, saying, hey, look, this is my intention. This is what I want to do. I'd be interested in representing you. Are you interested? Yes. So I started building the stable of artists. Okay. I started putting together all the marketing material and websites for what that was going to be. I started looking at real estate, figuring out where could I put this gallery and what's that going to look like. That's the part where I quickly realized the expense of rent. And for me, it felt like just trying to do this out of the gate, that was going to be a high cost of entry. So in order for me to kind of dip my toe in the water, I thought, let me see how this works. I'm going to rent a space, an interesting space. I'm going to find an artist or artists, depending on what my vision was for that particular exhibition. And I'm going to showcase their work in this space that I'm renting for a month or 6 weeks or whatever that is. And I'm going to do all the marketing and sales and promotions behind that. And, I did almost 30 of those before I opened the gallery. And it was the success of all of those finally linked together that I realized, okay, there's a market here. There's an interest here. There's a service here. I'm providing a service to the artists. I'm providing a service to people that want to see art and want to purchase art and live with art and make it part of their lives. So that gave me the confidence to say, okay, now it's time to open a gallery. And for me at that point, it made sense to not put money towards rent, but to invest in a property where I could really have more control over everything.
Well, not only is it from a financial standpoint more permanency for you, but it's also the expression of permanency to the community and to those artists.
Exactly.
Would you agree?
Exactly. And, while it was great to do pop-ups, and in some ways I still think that I'd like to have like an outreach from the gallery and doing some pop-ups in different places, the challenge was that it wasn't always easy to find me or where I was going to have my next show, right?
Okay.
For as much as I tried to do that, it was hard to build maybe a consistent audience.
Right.
And now having a space that's dedicated to having art and exhibitions and the commerce of art happen there, it becomes a destination to go to, right? You know where and when you can access that.
Yeah.
So it's a better scenario, I think, for all involved.
So as the marketing arm, in theory, in big picture view here, for artists, what are some of the challenges?
Just getting it seen, you know, and while digital media is fantastic in getting connected to people, it's not always the best way to see art.
Good point.
Yeah.
Let me just interject here. When I went to Mia Tarducci's studio, it was so eye-opening for me because, yes, she works on big scale, a lot of vibrant colors. That's just her style. But what, from a technical standpoint, became very apparent to me was that no matter how very saturated that JPEG might be, to the artist's, their specifications, so it matches the photo, but it's real saturated. Until I saw the texture of that paint
and all those layers
on those cans and the layers and under, that's part of the entire experience that totally cannot be left out.
No, it's a huge part. I think it's the biggest part, actually. And that's become one of the challenges lately, especially having had been closed for 3.5 months. So many galleries and museums and artists, any kind of art outlet has been really trying to saturate the digital market with their images, right? And it's great, but I've become so numb to that because I want to see work in person. There's nothing better than standing in front of a piece and understanding its presence and its vibrations, its scale, and like you said, its texture and color. You'll never get that on a little window on your phone, ever. And it's great that I can click into the Louvre and check out pieces from my phone here in Pittsburgh.
Stand there.
Yeah, but there's nothing like being there, right? So for me, the challenge is to continuing to get just be known and expand our audience and get people in the doors. That's the most important thing, because people connect with art in a more personal way when they see it like this. I had a couple come in to our opening 2 weeks ago, and they're friends of mine. I've known them for a long time. They hadn't been in the gallery, just hadn't had the chance, but they'd made the effort to come, and they really were coming out mostly just to kind of see the gallery and support me, but then also check out the artwork. And there was a piece they absolutely fell in love with that they had to buy. And, they said, we came here with no intentions of buying artwork, but we have to have this painting. And, that wouldn't have happened in any other way. It just wouldn't have, So it's really important to just get people into the physical space and seeing the physical work.
Well, you also show sculptures, right?
Yep.
I mean, so would you say the classification for your gallery is visual arts?
Yeah, I mean, visual contemporary art, right?
Okay.
We do everything from sculpture to paintings and drawings and prints. And, I've got an artist in the gallery right now that all of her work is hand embroidered. It's amazing.
Okay.
So
that's stuff you have to experience.
You do. You can't see it on a JPEG on your phone. You just can't.
Yeah, I mean, a sculpture alone is three-dimensional.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be able to walk around it and see how light hits it, and it just doesn't work. And I mean, a lot of people have been using a lot of different virtual platforms where you can, sort of virtually walk around a gallery space and maybe around a piece, but it's just lacking. It's lacking.
Yeah, and the same thing in home sales.
Yeah.
You can walk around the house all you want with a Mattersport camera or whatever you want.
Right.
It still does not replace standing in that property, and it's the same thing with experiencing art.
Absolutely. It's all about experience.
Yeah, there's no question. So talk a little bit about Pittsburgh's art community.
Well, that's a pretty broad brushed question.
That's okay. But we have time.
I think in general, first of all, I mean, I'm probably biased, but I actually think it's amazing.
Why? Why is it amazing?
Because there are so many talented folks here doing so many amazing things. And it is, I think it's become a place where people have either been here and stayed, or they have found it and come here and now have stayed. So you're starting to build this real vibrant community of creatives. And, I'm going to speak mostly from the visual arts perspective, but, having been in the advertising and marketing and trade show aspects, I've been in a lot of other creative branches of what that looks like in Pittsburgh. And just across the board, I think there's some amazing things happening. And I can't say why specifically that is, but I do think in general Pittsburgh has been for a long time and still is, although it's wrestling with being an affordable city. So a lot of people have been able to find those studio spaces that are maybe off the beaten path, that they can set up shop relatively inexpensively and create their work. I do think that it lacks opportunities for that work to be seen. I'm one of a handful of galleries in town. There were a handful more that over the last handful of years have closed. I'd like to see more of that. We don't have.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's maybe been, and there could be a lot of reasons. This is pure speculation, but I think in general, people don't necessarily realize what they have in their backyard, right? They don't realize the quality of art that's here, and they think that you got to go outside of Pittsburgh to get good art. You got to go to New York, you got to go to LA, wherever. So maybe that's part of it. And it's not an easy business to be in. Art sales in Pittsburgh is a challenge. I think I said in that recent article that you mentioned earlier, it's not bread, it's not milk, it's not Steelers gear, right? So it's not a necessity.
Right.
It's a luxury in the sense that it's not a necessity. But to me, it is. It's a necessity. I live with art. It's all throughout my house. It's in my gallery. It's an important part of who I am and how I live. I think I got off track of your question. But getting back to the creatives, I just think that Pittsburgh slowly has developed as a consistent creative community, and I think it just keeps getting stronger. I think people, like I said, have discovered it and are coming here because of the affordability and the ability to make their work here, even if they're not necessarily showing and selling here. This is kind of a home base for them, and they're doing things outside of the region. And I think that in general, the arts community here is very supportive of itself. There's the Associated Artists of Pittsburgh. That's a very long-standing artist organization. I think it's 110 plus years old now. And they do a great job of connecting artists and exhibiting artists and being a resource for artists as far as tools that they may need to support their careers. And they have a nice audience, right? So I think that that's a good way of getting artists connected to a larger community too. So I do think there's a lot of just strength in the creative that's happening here and the general support of that creative. I always think that there could be more. I think that, again, based on exposure and experience, we could start to develop more of a collector's base and people that are actually paying for this art that's being created that will continue to grow and sustain the community. But that's one of my challenges.
Well, Pittsburgh is certainly becoming a more cosmopolitan town.
Absolutely.
Would you not agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just the redevelopment
Yeah.
within the city itself.
Sure. And I mean, you see that from your perspective,
Yeah,
right?
there's no question.
Yeah.
That would have to help the art community.
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah. I mean, because you are getting people that are moving in from outside the region where they lived in a place where maybe art was a bigger part of their
Absolutely
culture, right? You know, they're coming in from the Chicagos and the New Yorks and the West Coast where art was maybe a larger part of the scene. What I think Pittsburgh lacks is that many of the other cities do have is like a designated spot within the city that becomes kind of the gallery row, right? The galleries are very spread out and they become more destinations than a particular spot. For a long time along the corridor of Penn Avenue and Garfield, there were a handful of exhibition spaces. There still are some up there, but not as many as there used to be.
Right.
A lot of them are very experimental spaces, but do a lot of really interesting and cool things. But there's not really anything like that. You know, there's a couple key galleries spread throughout Pittsburgh, but not like one particular place where you can go and just sort of spend an afternoon just gallery hopping.
When I was in Toronto, I want to say it was 99, 2000, and spent time, and of course we went to the Pantages Theater for the
Phantom.
Yes, the last year of that. But what was striking to me was that area where the Pantages Theater was, and I don't know if they called that North Toronto. There was a name for it. But the amount of art in that maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 block area was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to myself, Pittsburgh does not have this.
No, it doesn't. I mean, we have the cultural district, right, where we have our theaters for presentations like that or live music. And there have been a few galleries that are part of that system. A couple of those have closed along the way. I would love to have been downtown. It wasn't something that was going to fit me in my mold.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. That totally lacks, and that is part of the fabric of a city. If you can just go someplace and be immersed in all things art, again, if it's theater, music, and visual arts at the same time, that's an amazing thing. That's something that we don't have here currently.
Pittsburgh is a very unique town.
Oh, in many ways, yeah. But yet we call it home.
But it's so amazing to me, though, that like here we are talking about contemporary art
in Pittsburgh,
which a lot of us, parents of very ethnic working class mill, town folks, the standard joke was that, with our I don't know, the areas we grew up in, modern art's a joke, contemporary art's this, I can paint this on the wall and sell it for $3,000. We didn't grow up in a very enriched area for contemporary art. Yeah. Does that resonate with you?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's been here, but I didn't grow up with that personally.
Right.
The couple times that I would go to the museum was usually on a field trip through school, and it was more of going to see the dinosaurs than it was going to the art museum.
But honestly, and I'm sure that probably will resonate in any city with children, but you get it. We just weren't, I don't know. Again, maybe not being real cosmopolitan in the 70s and the 80s, in the 90s here, as we kind of are now. Yeah. But we weren't exposed. I guess the word is exposure. I just was not exposed to. My parents weren't thinking about taking me to New York.
Totally.
To what is the Guggenheim? Yeah. They weren't thinking of doing that. That wasn't on their bucket list.
Right. No, exactly.
And I'm sure that background that I have is shared with millions of other kids from mill areas across the country.
Exactly. But it's changed, and it's continuing to change, which is great. I mean, we do have some fantastic institutions here. I mean, the Carnegie Museum is amazing. And what they do every 3 to 5 years with their annual exhibition, their international exhibition, bringing art from all around the world for, a 3 or 6 month period of time is fabulous. I mean, we've got the Warhol in our backyard. That is just in and of itself an amazing thing. I don't even
think we really even understand how amazing that is.
No, we don't. And that's one of those things I think you don't realize what you have in your backyard sometimes, right? If it was in New York, we'd be traveling to New York to go see it.
No question.
And here it's on the north side. And are you driving to the north side to see it? I mean, I am, but I'm just saying in general, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think we have to sometimes look at ourselves and realize what we do have here and how great it is. And not be embarrassed in any way, or there's no need to be, right? Because we do have some quality institutions and some amazing quality artists that are producing right now.
What is art to you? And before you talk about being a loaded question, the reason I asked that question is when I found art, it was very therapeutic for me. It was time that I could spend alone with a painting or with a sculpture, and it did something to me. I can't explain, it wasn't uniform. It was every event was different. Every piece was different. Yeah. But when I was willing to let that in and experience it, it did something for me. It's a little esoteric maybe from my background, but it was, I hope I'm resonating. Yeah. That's what art is to me. It's how it makes me feel.
Well, that's exactly it. I think that's true across the board. And that could be a positive, a negative, or even a neutral feeling, right? You look at something.
Thankfully.
Yeah, right? You just look at something and you're like, I don't know. Or you look at something and just have a very negative experience with it, but it evoked some kind of emotion inside of you. So it produced something. Or like you said, you spend some time and you become meditative with it, and you really sort of embrace it and you absorb it. That's a different positive experience. But I think art in general is something that causes you to react in some kind of way, right? Again, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm looking at the logo behind your head. Yes, that's artwork, but we're not talking about the same kind of fine artwork that we might be talking about at this painting over here, right? So, I think it's with the intent and purpose to get across an idea or an emotion. a reaction of some sort. For me personally, art is just, it's become so much part of my life, right? I think part of what was missing for me throughout my career was I always desired this blend between life and work, where you didn't realize one over the other, right? And for many years, I felt like I was going to work and then I would have my time away from work. And now I just feel like I'm always on, but I don't feel like I'm ever working. It's something that just is such a part of me and what I do that it's just an extension. So it has become very different for me in that way, because it's become very personal in that way. But I still, for as much as it's part of my business, I still love to collect. I'm an addict. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, with the downturn of things with COVID, I don't have the expendable income right now that I usually throw at artwork. But it's also allowed me to appreciate what I do have. Right.
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
So I'm looking at things in my home in a different way. I'm spending more time with it, having been stuck at home for a few months, you're in your environment and you're more immersed in your space and the artwork that you have, as opposed to just kind of coming and going and just letting it be in the periphery. So, it's a super important part of my life.
There seems to be a trend, maybe it's a trend that was recent, a year or two, at least things that are on my radar, where artists are joining with musicians and either it's comedians or entertainers, and they're putting exhibitions together where they're blending all these art forms.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that at all?
I mean,
like live painting,
yeah,
things like that?
No, I'm all for it if it makes sense. Sometimes when you put collaborations together just because, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we put A and B together?
Right.
Well,
doesn't
did
mix.
you really think about it? Because I don't know that works. I've had the good fortune a couple years ago to work with an amazing musical group here in Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh New Music Ensemble.
Okay.
They've been every July for the last 44 years.
Yeah.
They basically take over the City Theater in the South Side. And they do 4 different week performances of new music. And it's new, I'm going to get this wrong and I'm going to do them an injustice, but it's newly written contemporary music, but using like sort of mostly classical instruments. And in working with them and their artistic director, their creative director, they wanted to try to bring some more visual art into the musical experience.
Okay.
So I worked with them and curated a couple artists to be part of the onstage experience. And that art would change throughout the course of that month just based on the performances that they were doing. But that artwork was chosen to be and that was even one particular piece, 2 particular pieces were commissioned to be specific to coincide with some of the music that they were playing. And in accordance with that, we would also then show other artworks from those artists within the lobby of the City Theater that became a sort of a mini exhibition of work that was for sale. So there was the work that was on stage, and then there was work that was part of the exhibition. So to me that made sense because we were thoughtfully collaborating. We were putting together art and music that made sense together. And I'm all for any kind of collaborations that make sense. It's when you start putting these things together that just, I don't mind a little bit of dissonance, but when things just don't work, they don't work.
So I'm thinking, you wouldn't put George Jones, a George Jones concert with a modern live painter.
Depending on the painter, perhaps. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. It has to fit, though.
Yeah.
It has to fit. But art, contemporary art, there's contemporary art, and then is there modern art? Is there delineation there?
Well, there is. Modern was considered, and boy, my art history is going to fail me here, but
okay.
But the modern art movement happened. How do I want to say this? Contemporary art is art that's being created now.
Okay.
There is modern art that happened just before that, right?
So contemporary is really not a style.
Not a particular style.
Okay.
Not a particular style.
Okay.
It's sort of an all-encompassing word, right, for art that's being created now, in the now. But yeah, there's modern art that feels contemporary. It's not the old masters. It's not like the Da Vinci's or the Michelangelos, but it's more like the Picassos and the Dalis that you talked about. They would be considered modern artists.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's fascinating to me, just the classification, and then where does the line There isn't a line.
Well, there are many lines across the timeline, but
yeah, timeline.
Yeah,
True.
yeah.
If you were doing this, I don't know, 60 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. 60 years ago.
I wouldn't be born.
No, I know that. I'm just saying, in the parallel universe, you'd have been born 100 years, whatever, 60 years ago.
Sure.
And yes, business was run differently and technology was differently, but good art's timeless. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
And you had the ability back then to reach out to artists and show artists that you admire to this day. Who would be in there? 60 is a broad term. You go 80, go 40.
Yeah.
Who would you have had a passion to show then?
Well, I mean, one of the first artists that I think about would be Willem de Kooning.
Okay.
He's considered an abstract expressionist, and he's, in my book, just phenomenal.
Write that down, friends.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, and he's, we have one of his most wonderful paintings in the Carnegie's collection. As a matter of fact, just feeling that I hadn't connected with art physically in a while, I took a day last week to go to the Carnegie just to stand in front of that painting for a while and then enjoy some of the other favorites that I would say. But he's phenomenal. You don't often hear his name in sort of it's certainly within art circles, but in general circles, probably not. You're not going to hear him like you're going to hear Picasso, right? You're not going to hear him like you're going to hear Dali, or maybe even Cezanne. But Willem de Kooning would be one. And not too long after that, Warhol, certainly. And what Warhol did early on and what he did even throughout his career was phenomenal. It's been argued that between he and Picasso, which one is the artist of the 20th century? Very different, but
very different.
but equally impactful. They have influenced so many other artists after them.
But he also was a character too.
Yeah,
he had his own persona.
Well, many artists can be.
And he was in. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was in merchandising, advertising.
Yeah, of course. Did films.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about someone who knows how to make money. We talked about.
Oh, you could open GQ in the late '80s, and you'd see an advertisement. There'd be this stunning line of these models, male and female. And then there'd be him on the end. And they blend him right in there like he was just part of the street scene.
Well, he was, and he made that scene in many ways. He was very social, and he would go to all the events and the clubs. Yeah, and he was constantly photographing them and documenting all of that. So, totally influential artist.
Yeah, Warhol, and we do take that for granted in Pittsburgh. We do. That's
I'm
just crazy.
Challenge you to get there within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, I've been there plenty of times before, but I need to go back.
That's what I mean. Just get there.
When you do a show, how long does it typically last?
Normally about 6 weeks.
Okay, so it's there for a while.
Yeah, but it seems that way. But man, those weeks go quickly. Just as you're setting up one, you realize you're taking it down and starting with the next one. This
when they sell, they're gone.
We keep them up through that 6 week
Is that how
period.
it works then?
Yeah, because we don't want to disrupt the look of the show.
Absolutely.
Right? These works were picked to be part of this exhibition, and once you start taking them off the wall...
So a patron comes and acquires a piece, it stays. They don't acquire the piece physically until the show is over. That's
correct.
Good to know.
And then they either pick it up or we deliver it or whatever we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, they're up for the entirety of the show. Now, aside from that, we might have one or two artists in the gallery at any one time, but we work with well over 50 artists.
Right.
So there's stuff that we
They're
have
on your site, right? There's a whole grid list of them.
It is, but unfortunately, our site is probably not as current as it could or should be. It's hard to, because artists are constantly working, and there's new works that are available, and other works have sold. So it's a rotating inventory at all times. Mm-hmm. But if you go to our site and you see a particular artist and you're like, I kind of like this work, maybe not these particular pieces, what else do you have? Then that's where that conversation starts.
Okay.
But but we do keep some things in inventory in the back room of the gallery. So if you do come in and we start a conversation, and again, you're not necessarily vibing on any particular thing that's being shown in that current exhibition, there might be a few things in back that I might say, hey, well, let's take a look at this, or we'll make studio visits, or we have done this numerous times too, where we'll bring artwork to an artist's or to a patron's home to see how it's going to look and feel in the home. Do a little bit of a staging for them. It's very service oriented in that way. Oftentimes, in working with individual clients, or I work a lot with architects and interior designers with their projects. So I'll take photographs of the site themselves, and I'll actually literally to scale mock up what that room looks like with particular art in it. So even before we get to placing things physically, we're looking at them in that way. They might narrow it down to a couple pieces, and then we'll bring those pieces out and see how those look. So very, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes of what typically is just on those gallery walls at any one time.
So would the word curator be an apt title for you?
Yeah, because I do, the artists that I work with, and when we do have exhibitions, I, plan on what we're going to show and how we're going to show it. So in essence, I'm choosing those works and arranging them within the gallery itself. So that's the curation aspect.
Talk about that process so I can get a better understanding. So you have an idea for a show.
Yeah.
The idea will come from you based upon art you're viewing or one artist's group of work.
Yep.
And then there's a theme for the show. Is that how it's done?
Yeah, typically. So, sometimes we'll do an exhibition of one artist that has been working on a particular series, and that's pretty much what the focus is. They might have created 50 pieces for the series. Maybe I only chose 20 or 30 of them, or whatever that is, right? That's sort of a little bit more cut and dry. Then there are ones like this exhibition that I have up currently. I knew as we were planning the exhibition schedule for this year, I knew what both artists were working on independently as I've done studio visits with them. I'm constantly meeting with artists and trying to see what they're up to and where their current inspiration lies. And I knew Zach Brown was painting these amazing large-scale paintings of skeletons.
Yeah, the Dances with Death.
Yeah, Death Dance is the name of the exhibition. Yeah. So I knew he was painting those, and I knew Mary was doing these amazing embroidered pieces that are based on. So she has this textbook from the 19th century that it basically outlines various ways in which children might find their demise, right? So it's kind of a warning to children that, don't play with hot water, don't run with scissors, and those types of things. And so she's taken the text and she's embroidered the text onto these textile pieces, but then she's created these sort of figurations that represent what you're reading in the words. So I liked their lighthearted approach to the darker side of life, right? And I thought, man, these would be great together. So I had that conversation with both of them, saying, here's what where my interest is. I want to be able to basically exhibit you both at the same time. And here's Zach, what Mary's doing. Here, Mary's what Zach doing. How do you guys feel about this? They both love the idea, so we just developed that over the course of a few months, and then finally did the exhibition.
And that's where you're passionate about.
Yeah,
right?
for
that's
sure.
That's where your passion lies.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's interesting. You have two artists working independently in studios in entirely two different places in the city,
right?
And they don't even know each other, let alone what they're working on. And here's a chance to, first of all, introduce them to one another and inspire each one of them with each other's work, and then be able to showcase that work in one space. It is just really, really cool. And because they both have their own sort of followings, those different followings came out to see and support that particular artist, but then they're being cross-pollinated to see what the other artists are doing. So it starts to build a much broader community in that way.
I cannot express to anyone watching this show or listening to this show that I, being a complete art novice, what this exposure to artists on this show has done for me. It's Mia Tarducci, it's James Simon, it's you, it's Zach Rutter, it's Tom McGallis. It's changed my outlook a lot. I certainly understand. I'm starting to understand that business model a little better than I did. But beyond that, there is something intrinsically beautiful besides the aesthetics of it. The experience of experiencing art was something I had no idea until I started doing this show. It's absolutely enriching.
And it goes beyond just the art. You're actually talking to these artists and creators themselves. So while you're getting a chance to see their art, that's one experience, which is great. But to be able to connect with an artist about how they work, and why they work, that's a whole different experience.
It puts all the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, it does. It makes the artwork make sense, right?
Yeah, it actually completes it.
Yeah.
Knowing some of the story behind it.
It does.
And you creative folks live the most fascinating lives. I will tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed my conversations with creative folks. It's amazing, but you understand at that time, I think, someone that because I can't paint.
Yeah.
so I don't know that whole, and I think a lot of people look at artists in amazement because we see a painting and go, I could not do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't even try to emulate part of that.
Sure.
Most of us couldn't even, and that different way of thinking, I think, is what we find fascinating.
Yeah, and that's where you have the appreciation. Right?
No question about that. Yeah. It's exciting, though.
It is. And I think what you're saying is true in general, that the more you are exposed to it and the more you experience it, the more you want to be exposed to it and experience more, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's, again, it's that first time that you walk into the gallery or you walk into a museum or you walk into an artist studio and you get that little taste of what that feels like. And it starts to, again, break down those barriers that you understand that, oh, this isn't so pretentious.
Oh, it's not pretentious.
Yeah. And
shame on us for being so naive to believe that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think some people like to try to put on a pretension, right? And create those barriers. But I don't really think you're going to find that in Pittsburgh.
I don't think so. And like we mentioned earlier, I think the younger generation really doesn't give a shit about that.
No, they don't. They
really that's the last thing they're worried about.
Yeah.
Do they like it or they don't like it, and then they want to talk about
That's
it.
exactly it. On both sides, they're going to tell you exactly why they don't like it, and I want to hear that actually.
Absolutely,
I'm always asking people that.
Any artist would,
yeah,
right?
when they come through the gallery, if they say something, I don't like that piece, and I say, well, why? Tell me what it is about that piece that you don't like.
Right.
Or I love this piece. Well, what is it about this piece that you love?
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But isn't that whole atmosphere like the juice of it all?
Oh, for sure.
That's the experience of art, right?
It is.
It should piss you off.
Yeah.
It should make you feel great.
That's
you
right.
should be impassive or passive.
Yeah.
You should be able to feel everything.
Everything.
And I think if somebody's not exposing themselves to that, and again, you may expose yourself to it, and you may not have the same feelings I do, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But at least you got to expose it. It's part of life.
Right.
And I will tell you, this is the truth. After meeting Tom McGallis initially and Mia, and they both work, they're totally different styles.
Totally.
But very vibrant.
Yep.
Very vibrant.
Yep.
It made me look at things differently.
Yeah, that's cool.
Even goofy things about the studio, it wasn't so eclectic when I started to embrace color.
Yeah.
Something I never had done in my life.
Yeah.
I was the person that would put on the blue shirt and the black jeans and black shoes. And I didn't embrace color until I really had my eyes opened by these two artists that color's all around me.
Right.
Just start living with it.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds kind of corny coming from someone like me, but it's just that I was so dialed into that came from an artist.
Yeah. No, it changed a perspective for you, right? It opened your eyes in a different way, and that's what art should do.
And I missed it, Jeff. Plenty of guitars in this room. We had our hands on all that stuff, but it was never me pushing color.
Yeah.
It never was.
Yeah.
It was black, white, chrome, gold. But when it came to getting, and there's not a lot in here.
Yeah, no, but even looking at your guitars, there's very little color.
Very little. And there were opportunities, I think, in my past to do things with color that would have been palatable for some of these artists had I brought that to the table. And I just missed it.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
Oh, it's okay. But I say to myself, wow, I missed out on a really exciting, potentially exciting part of my life because I just didn't. I don't know. I just was not devoid of color. I'm not completely colorblind.
Yeah,
But boy, that vibrancy of art really has opened up my eyes in everything from clothing to cars that I like, lighting, anything. I feel it now.
That's awesome.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, no, it's not crazy.
It sounds very esoteric. But
no, it's great. It's great. I like to see and feel your enthusiasm about this. Yeah. I think that's important. I think that art has the ability to create change, right? Mm-hmm. And it made a change in you.
There's no question. Yeah, and I think but you got to let it touch you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have to have an open mind as you approach it. That's all.
Yeah, and I think
you don't have to like it.
Yeah.
But just be open to it.
Last question for you. What do you think the world's going to be overall? General question after the pandemic, because there's going to be an after the pandemic. Yeah. And how fast do you see the art community coming, quote unquote, back? And do you see any changes or do you see an area of growth there? What are you seeing?
Well, getting back to the digital and online, there has been a lot of movement toward that just because of necessity. Both with artists and galleries, people are trying to sell online. And I think, the numbers have shown that has increased. Mm-hmm. that may continue to rise, but I ultimately think that people want to see it in person, right? So I don't think that physical part of it is ever going to go away. You talked about art and artists coming back.
They never left.
No. I think if anything, they've been more concentrated in their studios because they've had the time to focus, right? And in certain ways, with some artists, this hasn't changed anything for them because they weren't locked down in their homes. They were just locked down in their studios where they were going anyway, right? And because they didn't have all these other outside distractions, they're really able to focus on their work. I've been excited to see what comes from the studios post-pandemic, right? So, because I know there's so much creativity happening.
Pent up.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And
it's a release.
For sure it is.
Creation is a release.
For sure it is. And it doesn't have to be pandemic or COVID focused, but it's work that was focused because of this, right? So I'm really curious
to create that work.
Absolutely. So watch out for the next year or so, what you're going to start to see. I think there's going to be an explosion of some really cool creative stuff.
Come back and see me?
Always. Anytime.
Yeah.
I want to play some of these, and I want you to come to the gallery.
I am going to come to the gallery.
We don't have to bring any microphones or cameras, but come to the gallery.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Pleasure, man.
All right, man. I can't reach you, but we got it. We are